Hi everyone, my name is Kalm. I currently work for the Royal Bank of Scotland, well, NatWest Group, as we're now called. I work in the investment banking division there in NatWest Markets, and I serve a role in M&A advisory, so mergers and acquisitions, advising large and small companies to buy and sell and potentially merge together to create further value. I think I've always personally had an affinity with, I guess, charitable causes or just making positive change. Through my whole university time, I always tried to look for areas where I could improve experiences for people that I guess were like me. I came from quite a low income background. I was a positive beneficiary of what they call, I guess, social mobility.
Mhm.
Always wanted to extend that to other people. Whilst I was at Oxford, there weren't that many students from my background by both race and class, and I worked
Mm,
very closely with the university to kind of address those sort of challenges and give them
mm,
advice on sort of programs and outreach. As a result of that, I was actually appointed an official advisor to the university. And I guess that was my first formal role advising an institution around, I guess, yeah, areas of impact and areas of
yeah,
change. And I think that carried with me through both my professional and personal life. So whilst had my first banking job, I always worked closely with the corporate responsibility team and worked closely with the charities that we partnered with to personally deliver workshops. But I didn't really necessarily understand or know there was a specific
mm,
role of kind of trustee and supervisory that I came to understand later. So the first real board role that I experienced was when I became a school governor. I went back to the old school, which I had went to for secondary school, and I
mhm,
just went and had a chat with the head teacher and said, I want to give back in some way. And I didn't really necessarily have in mind becoming a school governor at that time. It was just where can I add value? They really valued the professional skills that I had in terms of finance and accounts and everything through the job that I have. And they, invited me to potentially become a governor. And eventually I did join and I
mm,
served on that board. And I guess that was when I really started to get a taste for an understanding for what it means to provide board level support to organizations in communities.
yeah,
The first NED role or trustee or anything I actually did, I was approached by Starfish actually. And it came to me in quite a roundabout way. I was at a dinner just for a network of people working in the banking industry. And I sat next to a gentleman who I guess had some sort of connection with Starfish, but I didn't know at the time. And we were just
mhm,
talking about our causes and what we care about outside of finance. And then I got a message on LinkedIn the next day from one of the Starfish consultants and said, Stephen's recommended you for this particular role. Would you like to have a quick discussion about it? I think at the time that was a NED role for the Richmond Fellowship.
oh, yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I was really interested in what they had what they were working on. I had worked in or supported organizations that have done different areas of the kind of organizations they support. And I put in for an application for the Richmond Fellowship. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful,
mhm,
but it wasn't like a deterrent, really, to be honest. It was more, in fact, it was more encouragement because I didn't even know such a thing existed in such a way. It
okay,
was nice to be told, well, have someone recommend me off the strength of, I guess, the passion that came across just from a short conversation over dinner. And then having gone through the process of yourselves, I ended up keeping in touch with Juliet, who said, I didn't get this role, but she genuinely thought that I had some good skills and things to offer for charity. So she'd like to keep in touch with me and potentially
mm,
help support me in certain ways if I have any questions or CV review or something that she
yeah,
could be of assistance. So yeah, I guess the key kind of recommendations I would give is kind of put your foot in the water a bit before you try and jump. You know, a lot of trustees, and it's changing a lot, but
mm,
a lot of trustees and NEDs I find, particularly of an older generation, have had 10, 15, 20-year executive careers and then join boards.
mm,
The younger generation that is coming up is often offering what what we may not have in years and tenure of a corporate role. We may be able to bring in, youthful insights or technology understanding,
mhm,
or actually just being closer to cause areas in different ways. And I think it was really important for me to kind of understand what is my value offering.
yeah,
One, in terms of who I am, the diversity of my characteristics in so many ways, but also how do I develop that value offering based on the things I want to focus on. So, as I mentioned in my story, I didn't just wake up one day and say I want to be a trustee. I started off just doing advisory board roles in issue areas that I cared about. How do we improve education at this particular school? And then
yeah,
from that, it was, would you like to be a governor and actually provide more supervisory insight. And then from that, I went on to do a smaller trustee role and then a larger one. And I think
Yeah.
in longer term trajectory for me, I want to become a non-executive director in a corporate capacity. But those are all kind of intentional and sometimes accidental, but useful, deliberate developmental milestones along that journey. So I think if anyone is thinking about becoming a trustee, I think it's important to sit down with yourself and figure out what issue areas really resonate with you the most and what would actually give you passion to get up and do every day, because it is a real time commitment, it is a real intellectual commitment, and there is actual legal responsibility that comes with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we can talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, that'd be useful.
But I think really the core starting point should be, do you care about what they're doing? After that, you can also do a kind of an audit of yourself and say, what skills do I bring to the table? Is it communications and marketing? Is it finance knowledge? Is it audit, tax? Is it legal? Is it just lived experience? Because that's becoming increasingly highlighted among boards as well. Have you been through this issue area that we're trying to tackle as well? Because you can bring a different insight. So I think once you establish those two things, do you care about the issue? What skills can you specifically bring? Then it's really about just getting yourself out there and making yourself known to people. There are a number of board roles, like search firms out there that you can try and reach out to. Obviously, Starfish being one of them. There are a number of just online forums that you can go through, like Dynamic Boards as an organization, or online website database I use very regularly just to check in on what's happening. I don't always apply for roles anyway, but just to see what is out there and what you can be doing is really useful. And then I would say, actually, you can probably be more successful from cold call inbounds than you might expect. If there's a charity that you really care about and you want to work with them, I don't think there's any issue. In fact, I would encourage people to, send a note to the CEO or head of comms or someone and try and see, is there something that you could offer, or, talk about the skills or whatever you have to offer and say, is there some way you can collaborate with them? One of the first advisory board roles I got was from the East London Business Alliance. It's a charity I'd volunteered with in different ways. They had advertised for I think it was like a youth panel for a particular project. I sent a rather, as they told me, bold email to say that.
Gotta be bold sometimes.
Yeah, I said, it's great you're doing this youth engagement, but why don't you actually have youth involved at the most senior level? I think you should, consider me for a trustee. I think I was about 19 at the time. And they wrote back to me saying, this is absolutely ridiculous. Not in that way, but, but I appreciate your boldness, and actually we can see a real value for you in this project we're developing. We'd love to have you come on the advisory board and see what you can offer, and blah, blah. And that was the first real stepping stone I had to, kind of charity board. That was even before I did the governing role. So I think, just put yourself out there, but when you're putting yourself out there, be clear about what you have to offer and what you really want to offer it towards, because there are a number of opportunities that will come your way and you have to get discerning about it. I think one thing I wouldn't say struggle with, but I think I'm still working through myself, is what capacity means for me. I think for younger trustees in particular, will typically be working a full-time job of some sort, and you don't necessarily have command of your time in the same way a senior person would be at the firm. So when trustee meetings come in the middle of the day for 2 or 3 hours, you have to book a half day off. And to be very clear, it's very rare you will get a random meeting sprung on you. Boards usually have even over a year in advance, the timings for the scheduled meetings. But there will be off-the-cuff things where the charity or the organization needs to respond to something that's just come in, and they want to call an emergency board meeting or just an extra one. And understanding that you need to be able to be responsive in that way, or at least be able to communicate and be transparent about what your capability is in that context, is really important. I think the first year I was trying to be a trustee, probably spent 60% of my annual leave just booking off days to make sure that I could be at all of the meetings, and that isn't necessarily sustainable. So I think in terms of what maybe Starfish could do, on the one hand, it's helping younger trustees to understand what their commitments can look like, that when it says 4 days a year, it doesn't mean 4 days a year. It means 4 days you're present, but actually a few more days to read the papers beforehand, and a few more ad hoc things that may come in between. But actually, I think it should also be supporting boards that you're working with to understand how to be more flexible and adaptable to a younger or
Yeah.
working population. Because I think COVID is definitely, all the terrible things that have happened, it's definitely supported or helped people to understand hybrid working a lot more, or be a lot more receptive to it. And I'm this last 18 months or so has been very easy for me to respond to board matters, because I just jump on a Zoom and I can go from one meeting at work to a meeting on a charity thing and come back. In the real world, or the normalized life that we may return to, I won't be as easily able to just walk in and walk out of 2 meeting rooms. There'll be travel time and everything else. I think understanding what that capacity means for me is something that I wish I had considered a bit more, particularly because I took on a number of those board roles whilst I was already, whilst we were under remote working. So I've had to kind of adapt my agenda and the way I work with the new world order coming back in mind, and I'm fine, but I could not be fine. So I think those are areas I think I would highlight for people. So I think the biggest barrier I would say for younger trustees, working population trustees, is the kind of time commitment capacity element alongside the priorities they may have at work, and just making sure that whatever boards they're being inducted into are able to be responsive to that style of working and what their needs might.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I think, that's been really awesome, insight into your career and the sort of stages. I think, because it's, even when you start, as you say, you don't know what you don't know yet. It's all on, a lot of it's just on paper, really, isn't it? And I think this is helping to give younger people a sense of what it means to be a trustee, and what you can get from it, and the excitement. It's exciting, but it's also a serious role. So everything that you need to consider, really. And I look forward to us hopefully, working with you to get your first NED role in the next few years.
I look forward to that as well.